In this problem, we're told, what is the magnitude of momentum of a 10,000 kilogram truck whose speed is 12 meters per second? B, what speed would a 2,000 kilogram SUV have to attain in order to have I, the same momentum, and double I, the same kinetic energy? So in order to solve this problem, there's two things essentially we need to know. Momentum, the formula for momentum, which is just P, which is momentum equals mass times velocity. And then kinetic energy, which is the second part. And you know kinetic energy, right? So I can call it K sub E is equal to 1/2 mv squared, right? So these are the two formulas you use to solve for these two things. So let's start with the first part. So A is, what is the magnitude of momentum of a 10,000 kilogram truck whose speed is 12 meters per second, right? So we're given the mass, which is 10,000 kilograms, and then we're given the speed, or the velocity, which is 12 meters per second. And so what we're trying to do is solve for the momentum, which is just P equals mv. So all we have to do is multiply the mass times the velocity, and that's going to give us the momentum. So let's go ahead and do that. So it's going to be equal to 10,000, and then you're going to multiply that by 12. So if you go ahead and do that, do 10,000, right, kilograms multiplied by 12, you're going to get, that is 120,000, right, 120,000. And then the units, keep in mind this is kilograms, and then this is meters per second. So you just say kilogram meters per second. So 120,000 kilogram meters per second. If your teacher wants you to put in scientific notation, right, 1, 2, 3, 4, it would just be 12 times 10 to the 4. But whatever your teacher wants you to do, just make sure you follow that. But essentially it's just 120,000. So that's going to be the momentum of, or for the answer to part A. So now let's move on to B. So what is B going to be? What speed would a 2,000 kilogram SUV have to attain in order to have the same momentum? So that's the first part. So it's going to have the same momentum as this instead of it being, right? So P equals mv, right? But we know the momentum. It's going to have to equal 120,000 because it's having the same momentum as this one. But instead, it's going to be a 2,000 kilogram SUV. So the mass in this case is going to be 2,000. Right, and we're trying to solve for the velocity that it would take for this. So we can just use this formula, right? We can take the momentum, set it equal to the original, plug in the mass of this new one, and then that's going to give us the velocity it's going to have to be in order to be equal to 120,000, which is the same momentum as the first one. So just go ahead and divide by 2,000, right? So 120,000, if you divide by 2,000, you're going to get 60. So 60, and then the units are just meters per second. So 60 meters per second. That's going to be the speed it needs to have in order to have the same momentum. Now for the second part, it's going to be the same kinetic energy. So what we want to do is find the kinetic energy of the first one and then set it equal to the second, or the one with 2,000 kilogram, right? But we're going to be solving for V. So let's find the kinetic energy of this first one here, right? So the kinetic energy of this one is going to be 1/2, and then we just plug in the mass of it, which is 10,000, times the velocity, and we know it's moving at 12, right? So 12, and then it's squared, right? So just do 10,000, or sorry, 0.5, which is just 1/2, times 10,000, and then multiply that by 12 squared, which is just 144. When you do this, you're going to get it equals 720,000. So 720,000, this is joules, right? And so we want it to be equal to the second one. So 720,000 is equal to, and then we just set the kinetic energy of the second one. So it's going to be 1/2 mv squared, right? We're trying to find the speed, so we're solving for V, and the mass of the second one we know is 2,000 kilograms. So this is just going to be 2,000 multiplied by the V squared, because that's what we're trying to find. So essentially, 1/2 times 2,000 is just 1,000, and then we can divide both sides by it. So really just divide both sides by 1,000, and then we can square root both sides. So V is going to be equal to the square root of 720,000 divided by 1,000, right? So go ahead and do this. Let me plug into my calculator. So yeah, basically it's just the square root of 720, which is going to be 26.83. So 26.83, and it has some extra 26.83, 28, and so on. So you can round however you want. I'm just going to go ahead and round and say 26.83 right? So just round to the hundreds. So 26.83, and then the units is just meters per second because it's velocity, right? So 26.83 meters per second. This right here is going to be your answer for B. So this is the first part of B, this is the second part, and then this was your A. But yeah, so these are your answers, and hopefully you found this useful.